So, by now, we have understood the importance of and the essence of key financial statements like the balance sheet, the profit and loss statement, and the cash flow statement. Now that we have understood this, we know that it is very important for an entrepreneur to track each of these financial statements to ensure the success of his or her venture. But having said that, it is also important for the entrepreneur to have a centralized system which gives him summarized reports using which he can make key business decisions. Such systems are typically referred to as Management Information Systems or MIS, which provide the entrepreneur with the required reports in order to make insightful decisions for running the business smoothly. Let us listen to our subject matter experts talk about MIS and its importance.
For most entrepreneurs, management information systems are a way to track their progress. However, some entrepreneurs think an MIS as an investor's requirement and that it's not necessary for them. They perceive that it's a way for their investors to judge them on their performance akin to a scorecard. Let me tell you one thing. MIS or Management Information Systems are as important for you as an entrepreneur as they are to an investor. You will be way ahead of other entrepreneurs if you are in the practice of creating management information systems on a periodic basis. Now, let us understand through an example. If you were a restaurant owner and you made the budgets for spending on marketing initiatives, where you divided the expenditure equally among the three initiatives, that is Facebook, pamphlet, distribution, and let's say an advertisement on Zomato. At the end of the month, you would understand the conversion from each of these verticals. For instance, if you have spent 35,000 each on these three platforms and you earned 50,000, 40,000 and 70,000 respectively from these three platforms, it is evident that Zomato, being the third platform, was the most efficient channel for marketing if you look at the statements. But if you don't look at the statements, you will not be able to see that in the next month you should increase your marketing budget allocation towards Zomato. And this is where MIS helps you. It helps in predicting the results in the near future based on what you've done in the past. Not only does it give internal stakeholders a better understanding of your performance, it also gives your external stakeholders a good understanding of your progress that you planned for versus your previous performance. MIS reports should be a periodical exercise and each periodic movement should be compared in order to understand the major deviations over the period and the reasons for the same. Let us understand the key components of a good MIS. The first component would be the budget versus the actuals. As we discussed earlier, the most important aspect for an entrepreneur is to understand his performance over a period and compare it to the expected results for which you planned in the initial stages. By understanding this, he can correct his future course of action. Typically, an MIS format will include the budget versus the actual with a line-by-line comparison of the items you had budgeted for against their actual performances. For example, what was your revenue target? What did you achieve? What was the target costs? And for those revenue target, what were the actual direct costs? What were the overheads planned? And what did you spend for? And finally, what was your net income or loss? Understanding this would help you recalibrating your plans for the future. The other component to track would be the unit matrix, that is the per unit costs, which is key to understand for any entrepreneur. For example, for a sale of 1 unit of a product, what is the cost of production? What would be the cost of distribution? What were the marketing costs? And finally, what was your income for every product? Unit matrix helps you to understand the importance of each component. of your cost structure and helps you focus on the important areas which are driving the costs efficiency and improve on the areas which are leading to the deviations from what you had planned for. The next key part of an MIS would be the KPIs. They are the indicators for your performance, which you would want to track on a regular basis. As understood earlier, the KPIs would be typically identified as you start your business, but identifying them and monitoring them on a day-to-day basis is the key. As part of the MIS, one would look at how the performance against each of those KPIs has been over a period of time. Identifying 2 to 3 KPIs for each of your business activities will help you in monitoring your progress, and keeping it as part of the monthly MIS will enable you to track it for periods and look at the trends. For example, let's look at the customer acquisition cost as a KPI for any kind of business. These days, the customer acquisition cost is an important tool to measure your marketing performance for acquiring new customers. For instance, for e-commerce companies, typically the customer acquisition cost would be in the range of 400 to 500 rupees per customer. Now, in an initial business, it's pretty easy for someone to spend much higher than these numbers or much lower. But when you compare it to what your plans were and what are your benchmarks, you would know where you stand and what you need to correct in order to come to a long-term goal of 400 to 500 rupees per customer acquired. So these are typically the KPIs which will give you an indication of your performance, and keeping them in your MIS would give you an understanding of these trends for these KPIs. For a startup, understanding these trends is important because as you grow, these indicators will give you an understanding on the trajectory in which your cost is going, the trajectory of your customer acquisition, and the trajectory on revenues. The other components of MIS would be summary of your profit and loss account, the cash flow, and the working capital positions. Looking at these on a monthly basis does help you to take informed decisions. Comparing your previous performances on your assumed budget with your current performance will give you a better understanding of your financial health as a startup. It may not be the most critical thing to look at all these statements on a monthly basis, but if you do so, I can assure you, you will be a lot more ahead of other startups, and it will be definitely helpful for you too in the long run. For startups, it is crucial to keep track of performance, and this can be carried out effectively with the help of an MIS or the Management Information System. MIS reports should be specifically designed to contain information that would help you as an entrepreneur. Keep track of the venture's progress and performance. Remember, there is not a cast in stone format for MIS that you must follow. What's more important is that you want to be looking at on a weekly, monthly, or a quarterly basis has a logical structure and allows you to compare one product against the other products, the resources that are allocable, and the same across the timelines. For example, when we started Upgrad, the key components we were looking at were quite different from what we were looking at today. For instance, in the initial phases, the hiring was a very important aspect for us. So we were very closely tracking the number of people we were hiring and the hiring pipeline versus what is the requirement. And beyond that, what was our burn rate since we were not earning much revenue, and we were in the development phase, what was the spend on the technological platform which we were developing. As we grew along and we were started production on our courses, we started to monitor what kind of spends we are doing on recording the lectures, what kind of efficiency is there, how many number of hours we shoot, and what is the cost per hour of those shoots, so on and so forth. As we grow along, and today we are tracking the profitability versus the targets, the number of students and their engagement on the platform, the future pipeline of the courses, etc. So just to give you an example on how you would evolve looking at your financial statements,